In the third year of my marriage to Ethan, his secretary transmitted photographs of their intimate encounter to my mobile device. Without altering my expression, I forwarded the photographs to my lawyer, who promptly sent me organized documentation, after which I signed the divorce agreement without hesitation. Concurrently, I dialed Ethan's number, but a delicate female voice answered, stating, "Ethan is currently unavailable, may I relay a message?" I terminated the call and seized the opportunity to send the signed divorce agreement and legal complaint. Upon receiving another provocative message from the secretary, I finally experienced relief, as the marriage was conclusively terminated, leaving Ethan with no assets, a state I sardonically congratulated him for achieving. Both Ethan and I hail from families engaged in commerce with moderate wealth. However, our union was not a strategic business alliance but rather a bond forged from childhood friendship, perceived by outsiders as a predestined match from school uniforms to wedding attire. Falling in love with Ethan was not an anomalous occurrence, given that our families share a long-standing friendship, our mothers are close confidants, and it is said that they intended to betroth us even before my birth, with our names deliberately chosen to complement each other. Following our births, Ethan and I were nearly inseparable, progressing together from infancy, marked by babbling speech, to vibrant adolescence. My existence was permeated with Ethan's presence. Being 2 months my senior, he consistently assumed the role of an elder sibling with a mature demeanor from a young age. It was Ethan who led me by the hand into kindergarten. Overwhelmed by the unfamiliar setting, I shed tears copiously, which he patiently alleviated by offering me candy and singing soothingly. Subsequently, in elementary school, when I performed poorly on an examination and felt distressed, it was Ethan who comforted me with my favorite candies and assisted in correcting my errors. In middle school, during my initial menstruation when my skirt became stained, I was both ashamed and frustrated, immobilized at my desk, until Ethan dashed to the supermarket to procure sanitary pads for me. Unclear as to how he inquired with the salesperson, upon his return, in addition to sanitary pads, he brought a heating pad and brown sugar water, which he handed to me. Observing his flushed face, I couldn't resist teasing him. "Ethan, your face is so red," to which he retorted, "No, you're mistaken," shielding his face with one hand while passing me the items with the other. Accompanying these items was his school uniform jacket. After addressing my needs in the bathroom, I emerged wearing it. Ethan awaited me outside, inquiring, "Nora, does your stomach hurt?" having consulted the salesperson about the abdominal discomfort females experience during such times. He posed the question while scrutinizing my expression. Upon my nod, he grew anxious and declared, "Then I'll carry you to the hospital." His exaggerated concern caused me to blush profusely, prompting me to reassure him, "No need, it's not that painful, resting at home will suffice." Consequently, Ethan carried me on his back, enduring the curious gazes of onlookers, and delivered me home. The sunlight that day was radiant, and I still recall its warmth on my skin, alongside the sight of his reddened earlobes. Whispering into Ethan's ear, "Thank you, brother Ethan," I observed his neck flush as well. He tightened his grip and hastened his pace, while I giggled atop his back. After entering middle school, I ceased persistently addressing Ethan as brother, opting instead for his given name. Despite his coaxing, unexpectedly, a single utterance now rendered him visibly shy, which I found amusing. Unbeknownst to me, my own complexion was scarcely less flushed than Ethan's. That day, the blushing youth illuminated the vibrancy of our adolescence. The genuine stirrings of youthful affection likely commenced that day, marking the onset of burgeoning love, a delightful sentiment that persisted throughout our teenage years until high school. At 18, Ethan invited our entire class to offer birthday wishes on my 18th birthday. He was meticulously groomed, adorned with a brooch I had gifted him pinned to his chest. His hair was impeccably combed, typically composed. He stood before me clutching roses, yet stammered, "Nora, I like you, will you be my girlfriend?" I nodded, tears welling as I flung myself into his embrace. Amidst our classmates' blessings, we hugged and kissed, my affection for him peaking at that moment. He later explained that, despite our mutual affection, a romantic relationship differed from childhood companionship, necessitating a sense of ceremony, beginning with a bouquet of flowers for the confession. Thus, on the significant occasion of my birthday, he formally confessed, transforming our bond into that of boyfriend and girlfriend. Senior year was arduous and exhausting, yet Ethan's companionship rendered it sweet. We diligently collaborated on exercises, observing our progressively improving examination scores together. Subsequently, we both matriculated at the same university. Ideally, our families expected us to pursue finance majors to facilitate future integration into and management of their enterprises. However, I personally favored mathematics, so after familial discussions, I enrolled in a mathematics program while Ethan pursued finance. He assured me then, "Nora, you need only pursue what you love. I will strive to mature and shield you from adversity." I trusted him, as did my parents, who held unwavering confidence in this boy they had watched grow up, having long planned to entrust the Fu family business to their son-in-law upon their demise, ensuring continued protection for their daughter. A series of knocks sounded, and Daphne entered. "Miss, all your belongings are packed, Jeff awaits downstairs." I responded, "Yes, let's go." Daphne and Jeff, having observed my growth from childhood, relocated with me to Ethan's and my new residence post-marriage to manage my daily needs. A year prior, I instructed them to gradually pack my possessions in this household. Though Daphne was unaware of my motives, she treated me as her own daughter, personally handling my items as per my directives without delegating the task. She disclosed not a hint of this to Ethan. By today, only a few wardrobes of clothes purchased by Ethan remained, none of which I intended to take, perhaps explaining why he failed to notice the near-total disappearance of my belongings over the year. After we officially became a couple, our parents acquired a villa proximate to both companies as our marital residence. Presently, I have resided here for 3 years. All items within were personally selected by Ethan and me, though the sentiments associated with their acquisition have faded, prompting my unhesitant departure. Outside, Jeff had loaded the suitcases into the trunk, accompanied by several vehicles from a cleaning company I had engaged. Post-departure, they would enter the villa to thoroughly remove all remaining items, their professionalism ensuring the complete erasure of my living traces within a single day. By tomorrow, this villa will be listed for sale at a reduced price through an agent, with a buyer already secured, ready to move in once cleaning is completed. En route, my phone rang. It was Ethan. "Nora, did you just call me?" I remained silent. He continued, "Sorry, I was busy and didn't notice. Please don't be upset, dear wife, I won't let it happen again." Ethan's voice retained its clarity and affection, consistently adopting a cloying tone with me. Indeed, we had been married merely 3 years, and he was only 25. At 25, he was young and accomplished, a coveted prospect among elite families, thwarted only by my equally prestigious childhood companionship. Concurrently, he embodied the archetypal domineering CEO adored by young women. "Nora, why aren't you responding? Did you see my text?" he asked. I countered, prompting him to likely check his phone, his tone puzzled. "No text here. What did you send, Nora?" As anticipated, the secretary had deleted it. I chuckled lightly and shifted the topic. "When will you return?" This time, Ethan had traveled to a neighboring city for a significant project, initially planned for a week, now extended by 2 days due to unforeseen complications, necessitating an additional 2-day delay. Ethan spoke with a aggrieved tone, then cooed, "I miss you so much. I wish I could return home immediately to embrace my Nora." Deviating from my usual reassurance, I smiled again. "Await your return for a surprise." "Great, Nora's the best," he replied. After a few perfunctory exchanges, I ended the call. During my conversation with Ethan, the secretary sent several additional photographs. Ethan reclining against the headboard, loosely clad in a bathrobe, his demeanor tender as he uttered affectionate words, seemingly genuine in his sentiment. The images also included 2 tickets to a scenic destination, collectively indicating that Ethan was not engaged in project work but was instead fraternizing with the secretary, planning a romantic getaway thereafter. I did not respond to the secretary, as she had outlived her utility to me. My initial text was sent with deliberate intent. I was aware she would delete it, consistent with her prior pattern of erasing my call logs to Ethan following her provocations. She believed she had finally secured an opportunity for advancement. By deleting the message, Ethan remained uninformed of my signed agreement and filed divorce litigation, which, upon court ruling, would nullify our marriage. Post-divorce, she could feign ignorance and capitalize on this situation, yet she was unaware that she was not the first to challenge me. I have since forgotten the identity of the initial provocateur. Perhaps it was a junior from Ethan's department in our second year of marriage, or a new intern at his company. There were numerous instances. However, at that juncture, Ethan's interactions with them were merely flirtatious, lacking substantive progression. This secretary proved the most successful, having flirted with Ethan for over 6 months, ultimately achieving her goal by sharing his bed on this occasion. Viewing the Facebook posts deliberately sent to me, flaunting extravagant gifts, I found them laughable. Did she realize that I could legally reclaim all such items? Naturally, I have already instructed my lawyer to prepare the lawsuit. From the first individual to the current secretary, every cent Ethan expended on them will be recovered, with the evidence supplied directly by her actions. I am uncertain of the basis for her audacity. Did she assume that such provocations would incite my anger, cause a breakdown, or provoke a dramatic confrontation? My response was solely to preserve the evidence, ensuring that these young women, fully aware of his marital status yet intent on interference, would face consequences for their actions. Undoubtedly, the man incapable of self-restraint is most reprehensible. The young women coveted his wealth and aspired to affluence through misguided means, while Ethan, unable to uphold fidelity and betraying our marriage, merits greater condemnation. My parents were already awaiting me at home. My mother, astonished by the several suitcases in the car, inquired, "Nora, what are you doing? Why so much luggage?" To which I replied, "Mom, I've divorced Ethan." My parents stood dumbfounded, presuming I jested. "Nora, are you ill? Why would you consider divorcing Ethan?" my mother questioned, reaching to feel my forehead. "Let's discuss inside," I said, guiding my mother into the living room. My father dismissed the others, asking with concern, "Nora, what's happening?" aware that, despite my indulged upbringing, I was never capricious. I presented the printed documents to my parents. They perused them with growing perplexity and darkening expressions, and upon viewing the latest photographs, my father hurled the papers to the floor, furiously exclaiming, "That scoundrel dared to cheat, outrageous. I demand an explanation for our precious daughter." My mother, equally shocked, grasped my hand, tears falling. "Nora, I was unaware of your suffering. Had I known Ethan would turn out this way, I'd never have permitted your union." Having watched Ethan grow up, they believed they knew him thoroughly. Who could have foreseen that the boy who cherished their daughter would, shortly after marriage, engage in external dalliances, now brazenly exposed to her? "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Enduring this alone must have been agonizing, my mother lamented. My father rose, eyes red with rage, declaring, "I'll call that boy now. And Henry, his father. I want to know how they raised such a son." "Dad, hold off on calling," I advised. My mother, assuming I clung to Ethan, retorted in anger and urgency, "Foolish child, after all he's done, do you still wish to shield him? Ethan is likely in bed with the secretary now and won't answer. As for Henry, we'll inform him later," I stated calmly, as if discussing someone other than my unfaithful spouse. "Nora, are you muddled by anger?" "Mom, I'm truly fine. I wish to inform the Sue family after Ethan returns, as I have other matters to attend to presently. Trust me, I won't disadvantage myself," I reassured, eventually convincing them after prolonged persuasion. When Ethan received distress calls from former confidants, he had just disembarked with the secretary. After their tearful pleas, he hung up, his complexion ashen. He only now discerned something amiss. During his extended business trip, I hadn't called once, explaining the indifference in my voice during our last conversation. He realized I had discovered his past gifts to others, pampered by both families since childhood. How could I endure such an affront, especially given my deep affection for him, now likely replaced by fury? Ethan was incensed that these individuals, having received so much from him, couldn't maintain confidentiality, exposing matters to me and still expecting his aid. An absurd delusion. Ethan hurriedly called me, to no avail. The secretary, noting his dour expression, cooed, "Ethan, what's wrong? Didn't I say our association ends upon return?" "Mind your tone," Ethan rebuked coldly. The secretary bowed her head in grievance, but he, devoid of sympathy, entered the car and directed the driver home, ignoring her pursuit. I had blocked him, prompting a wry smile from Ethan. this girl, possessive since childhood, still threw tantrums after all these years, reminiscent of adolescence when my displeasure at his chats with other females required prolonged coaxing for a smile. "Sir, access is denied, we can't enter," the driver stated awkwardly, halting outside the villa, puzzled by the malfunction of the typically automatic gate. "Nora's having a little fit, it's fine, I'll go myself," Ethan said, his smile broadening, amused by my apparent game of barring entry. He disembarked, attempted the fingerprint lock unsuccessfully, then entered the password, again to no avail. Helplessly, he called out, "Nora, I'm back, hear me out first." Footsteps promptly echoed from within. He thought his Nora, as in childhood, could never stay harsh, always relenting to open the door after his coaxing. Ethan's smile froze upon seeing the opener a stranger. Why was an unfamiliar man in our home? A new servant, perhaps? Clad in casual attire, the man peered out, asking, "Who are you seeking?" "Who are you?" Ethan demanded darkly. Bewildered, the man retorted, "You're tampering with my gate," shouting, "And you ask who I am?" "Your home?" Ethan sneered, "This is my home." "Where's Nora? Did she enlist you for this charade?" "Open the door, I've no interest in speaking with you." The man laughed angrily, gesturing to the gate and villa. "I don't know you or comprehend your claims, but I presume you seek the former owners. I'm unaware of their relocation. This villa was legally purchased by me 3 days ago." "Impossible. This is mine and Nora's marital home. How could it be sold to you?" Ethan protested. Property staff arrived, recognizing him, and awkwardly confirmed the man as the current owner. Unconvinced, Ethan persisted until the man, out of deference to the staff, allowed him entry. Inside, not a single possession of ours remained. Ethan gazed at the vacant rooms, devoid of paintings, our chosen curtains, and carpets. Observing his reaction, the man sneered, "I told you, it's sold to me. How could Nora part with our marital home?" Evidently, he had genuinely wounded her this time, and Ethan departed, crestfallen. When Ethan arrived at my door, I had just concluded a call with my lawyer. My mother, informed by the butler, was furious enough to expel him herself, but I intervened. "Let him in, Mom, please stay calm." Ethan entered, greeted my mother who ignored him and, with an awkward chuckle, crouched before me, his voice tender. "I arrived late, causing my Nora sorrow." I kept my head bowed, silent. Ethan proceeded, "Nora, there's nothing with them. The gifts were company project rewards, distributed by my assistant, who erred by using my personal account. I withheld this fearing your misinterpretation, a rehearsed excuse. After all, as a sheltered heiress, how could I grasp corporate intricacies? Moreover, I loved him deeply, knowing me for over 2 decades, he was certain that swift contrition would secure my forgiveness, as it always had. Yet I merely gazed into his eyes, softly asking, "Is Yunqing's scenery pleasant?" His expression shifted abruptly. "Do you know your secretary's perfume lingers on you now?" Ethan hastily clarified, "It's accidental, don't misunderstand, Nora. I've called you repeatedly and sent messages, but you never responded." As I spoke, tears streamed down my face, evoking a poignant, resentful air and expression I had meticulously rehearsed before the mirror for its fragile appearance from this angle. "Nora, don't cry, I can explain everything," Ethan urged, reaching to wipe my tears, but I evaded his touch. I retrieved my phone, displaying the meticulously preserved provocative messages from his external confidants over the years. At the first, Ethan's face paled. Continuing to those from his secretary, from their initial flirtation 6 months prior to recent indecent photos, his complexion turned ashen. These images and texts rendered his prior explanation perfunctory and deceitful. "Nora, He stammered, hands trembling as he reached for me, only to be rebuffed again. "They're all fake, all fake." Ethan protested desperately. I wept silently, stating, "Let's divorce." "No. I won't divorce you, never," he blurted out. Kneeling before me, he swore, "Nora, I was drunk that night, I truly didn't know. I never meant to hurt you, don't divorce me." He persisted in his excuses and falsehoods, but I was content. His prevarication was precisely what I desired, affording me additional time to settle our assets. "Nora, please don't divorce me, I'll never sadden you again," Ethan pleaded at length, feigning partial relenting. I said despondently. Leave, I don't wish to see you now, let me compose myself. Ethan resisted departing, but my mother summoned others to eject him. Once he left, I promptly dried my tears, awaiting the lawyer's arrival. As I conversed jovially with the lawyer, my mother mistook my demeanor for grief-induced confusion. Unbeknownst to her, I had strategized for 3 years for this day. How could I not rejoice as the fruits ripened? When did my love for Ethan wane? Even I cannot recall, perhaps on a radiant afternoon. At university, our differing majors meant we only met briefly after evening classes. Later, academic demands restricted our meetings to weekends. Though we spoke daily by phone, our long-standing bond seemed impervious to distance, with no estrangement during reunions. Initially, I noticed a confession to Ethan on the school's wall, yet I trusted him, even jesting about it. Ethan's attractiveness and wealth naturally drew admirers. My confidence and security precluded jealousy. Yet, during our scarce encounters, I observed another name recurring in his discourse, causing mild unease, though I dismissed it initially. That changed when I saw a video on the confession wall, inadvertently filmed by a passerby, titled, "My shipped couple is real so sweet." Intrigued by gossip, I viewed it. The video depicted a handsome boy and charming girl, heads close, smiling, her words prompting his indulgent grin and a head pat. Their eyes brimmed with tenderness, bathed in sunlight with a pinkish hue, an exquisite tableau of youthful romance. Were the boy not my boyfriend Ethan, I'd have endorsed them. Trembling with rage, I checked the comments, learning she was the prior confessor. Ethan had claimed ignorance of her, yet comments revealed her name, the same one he'd mentioned recently. Signs had long existed. I stumbled from bed, intent on confronting Ethan, only to collide with my returning roommate. Seeing my urgency, she asked, "Nora, where are you off to?" "To find Ethan," I replied. She knew of our relationship. After a pause, she restrained me. "Nora, do you want to see yourself now?" My mind was chaotic, anger and pain from suspected betrayal thwarting calm thought. Shaking my head at her words, I aimed to leave, but she forcibly returned me to our dorm, pushing me before a full-length mirror where I met a face contorted with fury. Disheveled hair, tear-streaked face, a pajama button undone, and barefoot. Who was this? I stared blankly at the reflected woman. The mirror's figure mirrored my bewilderment, yet remained grotesquely distorted. How could this be me, never before so disarrayed? Noticing my calm, my roommate sat me down, poured water. Clearly, she'd seen the post too, enduring my hours of tears and tirades that day. Finally, she gently said, "Nora, you're Nora. You should always be confident and radiant, driving toward the sun, not like this." Her family was impoverished, schooling a struggle, requiring daily work for tuition. Later, I arranged familial aid for her education costs and a tutoring job with friends. Last year, when her family faced a crisis, I secured hospital care, curing her mother. Grateful, she often called me her little son. Hearing this again, I instinctively glanced at the mirror, still ghastly, yet her words resonated. I am Nora, the faux heir, not destined to orbit Ethan alone. I resolved to confront Ethan that weekend. After years as childhood sweethearts, I genuinely liked him and envisioned a lifetime together. However, if he now favored another, despite my anger, I preferred an amicable parting. I never anticipated Ethan acting unperturbed, arriving with my favorite cake, as affectionate as ever. Perplexed by his intent, I asked outright, "Ethan, have you cheated?" He emphatically denied it. I presented the saved video. After viewing, he sighed with feigned indulgence. "Nora, it's an angle issue many were discussing there. See, aren't others present?" "So my darling Nora was jealous. I'll be cautious henceforth, preventing rumors," he said gently, eyes affectionate, his warm hand on my head, yet I felt chilled to the core. After 20 years of life and knowing Ethan, I realized today that he deemed me a fool. Such proximity and intimate gestures he dismissed as trivial. His explanation, riddled with flaws, lacked sincerity so cursory that further probing would unravel it. Noticing my silence, he shook my hand, coaxing, "Nora, we're to marry. You must trust me more." Indeed, marriage I was to wed Ethan, so he could flirt elsewhere, expecting me to wait at home for our union? In that moment, the man I'd loved for years seemed to decay. I didn't condemn him solely for this, but subsequent observation revealed multiple flirtations. Though lacking substantial development, their tones and intimate gestures indicated unusual relationships. All proclaimed Ethan's rotten nature. I was truly blind and foolish. Taking 20 years to see him clearly reflecting on our time together only deepened my revulsion. From that day, I covertly enrolled in finance courses, studying relentlessly, uncertain whether Ethan's love was genuine or ulteriorly motivated. The Fu family's generational legacy must not perish by my hand. Fortunately, my roommate, upon learning my plans, switched to a finance major. Post-graduation, I placed her in the Sioux company. As its young madam, securing a suitable job for a friend was effortless. I specifically requested Ethan to favor her, enabling her to operate under his aegis. None suspected me this supposed love-struck fool, as they only saw my deep devotion to him over the years. Occasional rumors reached me, yet I steadfastly trusted my beloved, never confronting Ethan, content as his wife at home. All deemed the Fu heiress an unparalleled romantic. A top graduate from a prestigious university, I hastened to marry and settle as a full-time housewife, showing no interest in our vast family enterprise, delegating all projects to my husband. Ethan was assuredly to inherit both Sioux and Fu enterprises, merging the families. Such rumors had circulated in high society since our marriage. Tacitly, all assumed the Fu business would amalgamate with Sioux's. Thus, prescient executives allied with Ethan, anticipating Sioux's absorption of Fu for their own profit share. Their strategy wasn't misguided. Both companies were indeed nearing unification, but not under Sioux. It would be Fu, my Norris Fu. Ethan's assets and Sioux's shares would transfer to me post-lawyer verification of evidence and agreements. After marriage, each confidence provocation prompted me to suggest Fu's involvement in an Sioux project to Ethan. A newly unfaithful man is most guilt-ridden. Thus, most of Sioux's lucrative projects shifted to Fu. Ethan, unsuspicious and wary of my overthinking, acquiesced readily. Given the intimate Fu-Sioux bond, did it matter whose hands held them? I performed for 5 years, convincing all friends of my profound love for Ethan, so much that neither family contemplated a prenuptial agreement during marriage talks. My apparent devotion left Ethan unguarded pre- and post-marriage. To demonstrate sincerity, he signed a prenuptial agreement before both families, pledging that, in any future divorce, regardless of cause, he would exit with nothing. He further stipulated that if the divorce stemmed from his wrongdoing, all his Sioux shares would be gifted to me gratis. At 22, Ethan clasped my hand, eyes brimming with love. "Nora, I vow never to betray you. This agreement will never activate. It's my assurance, your perpetual safeguard." How did I play it then? Oh, I recall crying, overwhelmed with feigned emotion. I clung to him, forbidding such a signature. Yet he insisted, signing it before both families, who notarized it. Receiving the notarized copy, I threw a petulant fit, demanding this inauspicious document be locked away. The elders teased my childishness. Over the years, none revisited the agreement. Even Ethan forgot I retained it. Unbeknownst to him, I immediately secured it in my private safe with multiple encryptions. This treasure, Ethan's self-dug grave, demanded utmost caution. When the lawyer returned with a hefty stack of files, I meticulously reviewed each, chuckling upon seeing Sioux's latest project transferred to Fu. "Alma, you've secured even this for me." The girl beside me laughed. "Even a tiny mosquito is meat. How could we waste CEO Ethan's week-long trip effort?" Alma, my roommate, had worked at Sioux for years, collaborating with me seamlessly. Our bond was unbreakable, rooted in her gratitude for my past aid. In truth, she was my savior. Had she not restrained me that day, awakening me, I'd have lived a dream, likely ending with a cheating husband and the Fu legacy lost to others. Youth permitted me to be Ethan's wife, but with fading beauty and age, I'd be cast out, my life a mere jest. After verifying the documents, I signed them. Alma, now an Sioux executive with some shares, had gradually acquired more, transferring them to me. My holdings now surpassed Henry's. I waited patiently a few days for the court's ruling. With the prenuptial agreement and Ethan at fault, divorce was granted outright, prompting an immediate Sioux shareholders meeting. Meanwhile, Ethan lingered at my door with flowers, vowing to rewoo me and seek forgiveness. Henry regarded me with an alien gaze as I spoke confidently at the meeting, as if meeting me anew, presenting Fu-held and current Sioux projects. Shareholders exchanged glances. They cared only for dividends, backing whoever promised profit. Concluding my presentation, I smiled at them. Now, any objections to the new chairman selection? All but Henry aligned with me. With Fu's imprint on Sue's collaborative projects, any dissent could swiftly hollow out Sue. Nora, we're still family, Henry croaked, aged a decade. Sorry, Henry, I divorced Ethan this morning. Our tie is now merely cooperative, I replied, triggering his recollection of that agreement. But Nora, Ethan did no wrong. The court won't rule so, he insisted, smiling. I tossed him a file. If Ethan sending me bed photos with his secretary isn't fault, I'm speechless. Henry fell silent, hands shaking with rage at the evidence. Henry summoned Ethan to the company, berating him fiercely, bewildered until seeing the judgment. Ethan finally crumbled. Impossible, how could the court rule thus? I got no notice. It's fake, I'll sue. He cried, but the judgment explicitly noted his awareness and lack of objection to the divorce and fault, precluding any appeal. I never saw a notice. He staggered to me, pleading, Nora, you didn't send the agreement, right? You're deceiving me, aren't you? I did send it, I smiled, directing an assistant to block him, my tone gentle. The night you slept with the secretary, I sent it. Evidence confirms your awareness and acquiescence. Ethan's face drained of color. He recalled my inquiry during our call, yet he'd genuinely not seen it. No, while he showered, the secretary accessed his phone. She did it. Ethan collapsed, inwardly despising her. Henry kicked him in frustration, demanding an apology. I had no time for their pity play. I stated directly, Uncle, you know seeing Ethan disgusts me. He should resign voluntarily from Sue and stay out of my sight. I'll ensure your dividends, or else, tapping the resignation letter, I added coldly, Sue needn't exist henceforth. Also, Ethan must now complete divorce proceedings with me, I said, recovering. He sought to plead, only for Henry to slap his head aside. What more chaos will you wreak, ruining the family entirely? Henry personally escorted Ethan to finalize the procedures with me. Clutching the divorce certificate, Ethan muttered incredulously, how could it be? Nora adored me, so how could she truly divorce me? Ignoring them, I returned home. Soon after, I won the lawsuit to reclaim marital assets, securing full compensation. I confessed all my actions over the years to my parents. My mother, pained and regretful, wept continuously. My father, a seasoned businessman, sighed before swiftly arranging my succession to Fu. I busied myself with inheritance, share transfers, and engagements. Alma, now Sue's second largest shareholder, joined me in a whirlwind of activity. Though exhausting, wielding wealth and power felt immensely satisfying. At banquets, I was no longer Mrs. but Miss Nora. The label of Fu's love-struck heiress faded. I was no one's appendage, nor would I lose myself for anyone. Learning of Ethan's imprisonment, I had just signed a major government project. Initially, I deemed it a rumor. The official notice revealed Ethan discovered the secretary deleted his messages, causing his forced divorce, blaming her for ruining his marriage and Sue expulsion. He impulsively pushed her downstairs, resulting in her immediate death. I merely remarked briefly before Alma's new project diverted me. The past was irrelevant, as she said years ago. I, Nora, am meant to thrive toward the sun.